and welcome back to the fourth episode of Sex, Suffrage, and Scandalous Ladies. During this episode, I want to talk about something that is a little bit out of my comfort zone, which is sports. I played sports growing up, but felt like I never really fit in with it all the time, and I was also never really a big fan of any famous teams. I have my teams kind of just because I have to and like having a place of belonging somewhere in this realm. But other than that, I'm not the biggest sports person because even though I don't really find it entertaining to watch grown men like shove each other on fields, I do think sports give people a good sense of community. And if not people, especially kids, it allows them to learn how to work together for a common goal and, get exercise in and all that good stuff. But during this episode, I will be going over some of the historical elements of sports, specifically women in sports, and then move into how modern women are treated today in sports. Although I think it's relevant to the topic, I will not be going into detail about trans rights in sports, particularly what is happening in some schools across the country. It is super important to talk about, but for this episode not to be too broad, I won't really be discussing it. So to move in basically to one of the first physical activities that women were allowed to do, we're going to be talking about the bicycle. Yes, as you're probably aware, what drama could be surrounding the bicycle? Well, probably a little bit more than you think, so we'll get into it. As I have talked about in this podcast so much, relating it to suffrage, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton both declared that women were riding to suffrage on the bicycle, and this idea was reprinted in several newspapers at the turn of the century. In a more general sense, the bicycle gave women the freedom to go where they wanted, whenever they wanted, and it allowed women to escape sexual harassment that they often face on public transportation, and it was an inexpensive way to travel. With the new bicycle, fashion trends started, and a lot more women began to wear pants or flowy bloomers. And a woman on a bicycle began to represent this notion of a new woman, one who was college educated, active in sports, interested in pursuing a career, and looking for a marriage based on equality. So where does the drama fall in? Well, many people thought the bicycle would impact a woman's reproductive health. Perhaps her uterus would fall out, or she wouldn't be able to have children from the exercise, or God forbid she found pleasure somewhere from the bicycle seat. There were also reports that women would get bicycle face from the expression she must have while riding it because of the discomfort she should feel. There were so many nonsense claims at the beginning of women finding their place in fitness that it's almost no wonder why women in sports still have so much trouble being taken seriously. So one of the things that tried to get women in sports a little bit more equality was, obviously we know, Title IX. One of the acts promised to give women an equal playing field in 1972. The act states, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." In 1972, only 1 in 27 high school girls played a varsity sport. In 1998, it was 1 in 3, which is obviously a major difference. It is reported that women who are active in sports have greater confidence, self-esteem, and pride in their social self than those who do not. Girls who play sports are more likely to have academic success and stray from high-risk behaviors. Women are also high consumers of sports content. Sports are something for the family to be involved in, but even as we move further into the 21st century, women are more active in sports consumption than ever. As a matter of fact, a female-only sports bar was just opened in Portland, Oregon, to create a safe and fun environment for women interested in sports to get together. It's called the Sports Bra. So moving on from our brief history lesson of women in sports in general, I want to jump in and talk about sports legend Babe Deirdrickson. She was born on June 26, 1911 as Mildred Deirdrickson, but was given the lasting nickname Babe because of how often she would hit home runs in her neighborhood baseball games. She seemed to play every sport growing up, from golf, tennis, baseball, swimming, volleyball, etc. One of her most famous quotes is when she asked if there was anything she didn't play with, and she replied, "Yeah, with dolls." She competed in the 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles, where she won 2 gold medals in the javelin throw and the 80-meter hurdle. Babe met her husband George at the 1938 Los Angeles Open, and he helped her line up golf exhibitions. Between 1943 and 1947, she won 17 amateur tournaments. She also became the first American woman to win an amateur tournament in the UK. Babe was only 5'4" and 140 pounds, but she would often exaggerate these figures to make herself seem more competitive. She often moved from sport to sport when they were presented to her or what she was interested in at the time. Babe was voted for Female Athlete of the Year in 1932, 1945, 1946, 1947, 1950, and 1954 by the Associated Press, which also named her the greatest female athlete of the 20th century in 1999. Despite her several accomplishments, she was heavily criticized for her lack of traditional femininity, fears she might be a lesbian, or worse, a member of this idea of the third sex, which must have been meant that she was somewhere between a man and a woman because she did not showcase herself as women should be. Babe realized that in order to be successful during this time, she had to play up her femininity, which is very unfortunate, but something we often see today, as many female athletes are encouraged to look lean rather than muscular. Babe was quoted saying, "I've always been a fighter, ever since I was a kid. I've scrapped for everything. I want to win every time. If a game is worth playing, it's worth playing to win." In 1953, Babe was diagnosed with colon cancer. After undergoing surgery, she returned to sports while also advocating for cancer research awareness. She died 3 years later on September 27, 1956. She was 45 years old. She was honored by President Eisenhower at the White House, feted by the Texas State Legislature and the American Cancer Society, and given numerous medical humanitarian awards. The next activist I want to talk about, and sports legend, is Billie Jean King. She was raised in Long Beach, California, and in 2009, she was the first female athlete to be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Barack Obama. Billie Jean King is most well known for her support of Title IX and the infamous Battle of the Sexes against Bobby Riggs. Okay, so the Battle of the Sexes, which I'm pretty sure many people have heard about, but I just kind of want to get into the details. In 1973, tennis player Bobby Riggs wanted to come back into the spotlight by asking female players to play against him in a match. Billie Jean King at this point had already won 10 titles and refused to play against him on several occasions. After challenging another female tennis player, Margaret Smith Court, and winning, he challenged Billie again. He is quoted saying, "I'll play her on clay, grass, wood, cement, marble, or roller skates," Riggs said. "We got to keep this sex thing going. I'm a women's specialist now. I'll tell you why I win. She's a woman, and they don't have the emotional stability." On her. So Billie eventually accepted the deal, and the summer prior to the match, she was on her normal tour routine while Riggs spent the summer partying. On September 20th, 1973, over 30,000 fans watched in the Houston Astrodome, and it was reported that over 90 million people watched this televised program. Billie entered the stadium proudly, dressed as Cleopatra, but she was nervous. She was reported saying that she thought if she didn't win it, it would set women 50 years back. She did win, however, in all 3 matches. She became one of the first superstar female athletes, and she landed sponsorships from Adidas, Colgate toothpaste, Sunbeam hair curlers, and Wilson tennis rackets. Even after all the publicity of the beef, you could say, between Billie and Bobby Riggs, later on they became friends. She even spoke to him a few days before he died of prostate cancer in 1995. Billie retired from professional sports in 1983 after winning 12 major titles, including 6 Wimbledon and 4 U.S. Opens. She was reported as saying, "I know that when I die, nobody at my funeral will be talking about me. They'll all just be standing around telling each other where they were the night I beat Bobby Riggs." Billie Jean King is still an activist for women in sports today at 78 years old. So to change the scope of this episode a little bit and tie in some elements of intersectionality, talking about how different identities and the combination of our identities impact our lived experiences, I wanted to include stories about Black women in sports, as they often face a dual burden of both race and sex. So one of the most prominent female athletes is Serena Williams, a Black woman. Despite being one of the greatest athletes, gender aside, she is constantly scrutinized. Serena Williams was born in 1981. and grew up practicing at her local torts in Compton, California, and was coached by her father. And as we probably have known, there was a recent movie made about her father called King Richard, and Will Smith won an Oscar for Best Actor for his role as their father. Overall, Serena and her sister Venus have won several matches separate and as doubles partners. Serena has a reported 23 Grand Slams. Although she is one of the best female athletes and one of the best athletes in general, she's often not taken seriously by referees during the matches. When she tries to ask questions, they ignore her, or it seems as if they try to call something unfairly to provoke her, and she's often depicted as the common stereotype of a angry black woman. Serena has also had to break many bodily norms and expectations during her career. In the past, most successful tennis players were thin white women, and Serena and Venus changed that narrative by showing that tennis players could look strong and muscular, and that by having strong thighs and arms, it could enhance their performance in the sport. One of the most recent things Serena specifically was targeted for was the outfit she was prohibited to wear during the 2018 U.S. Open. Serena wanted to wear a spandex-like compression suit because she suffered from blood clots after the birth of her daughter. The organization, however, mandated that the uniform needed to be a skirt or she would not be able to compete. The French Tennis Federation president, Bernard Guideli, stated her compression suit was no longer be accepted. One must respect the game and the place. In response, Serena Williams wore a tutu to the games. Billie Jean King stated in a tweet in support of Serena that we need to stop policing women's bodies. The fact that the women athletes are required to wear skirts or prohibited from wearing something else when they have a medical issue further traps women in the expectations for them to be inherently feminine or given to traditional norms that hinder their performance. The next female athlete I want to talk about, and another one that has been criticized by the media, is Semenya. She is 31 and an athlete from South Africa. She was raised female, identifies as female, and is legally female. She is often criticized, however, for having high testosterone levels. She was 18 when she won her first championship in the 800-meter run in Berlin. She is very tall, very muscular, and very fast, so she was required to take a sex verification test after her win at the Olympics. Ever since then, the public has been split on whether or not she should be allowed to compete. She did not compete in the recent Tokyo Olympics, despite being a two-time Olympic winner and the fastest woman to run the 800-meter race. The rules state that she must lower her natural testosterone levels in order to compete in races between 400 meters and 1 mile. Supporters of this rule argue that this is in place in order to ensure an even playing field. In her support, a former Olympian, Bruce Riggs, stated, "Sport has always been about embracing difference and including, the celebration of diversity," he says. "Most outstanding athletes are outliers. Most athletes have a longer reach or a more fast twitch fiber, or they're taller, and we admire them for that. We admire them for what they're able to accomplish, but it's only in the case of women's sports where this drive for biological sameness is carried to this extent." Similar to Serena and Venus Williams, the public has criticized her body and how it should operate within a certain system. It is a reoccurring theme when women athletes, especially black athletes, do not conform to the standards imposed upon them. Some argue that if she looked different, they would not have questioned her speed. It is also argued that Michael Phelps has long arms and large feet, and that is what makes him one of the best swimmers. Yet no one is asking him to shorten his arms or his feet. Semenya tweeted a meme recently with the quote, "They laugh at me because I am different. I laugh at them because they're all the same." Another athlete that has been in the media recently is Shikari Richardson, another runner. She was prohibited from running in the Tokyo Olympics despite being a superstar in the trials because she did not pass the drug tests for marijuana in her system. Richardson claims she smoked marijuana to help cope with the recent loss of her mother, and it was legal in the state she smoked in. USA Track and Field stated they were sympathetic to Richardson and agreed the international rules surrounding marijuana should be changed. They stated, "So while our heartfelt understanding lies with Shikari, we must maintain fairness for all the athletes who attempted to realize their dreams by securing a place on the U.S. Olympic track and field team." The public response to this emphasized the critical nature of black women in sports, but also the stigma of marijuana use, especially surrounding people of color. During this year's Winter Olympics, a Russian ice skater was allowed to compete even though she took a prescribed heart medication that was prohibited by the games. Shikari Richardson called out this double standard, arguing, "Can we get a solid difference on the situation? The only difference I see is that I am a black young lady." The news of the positive test in the ice skater system was only brought to attention after she helped her team win a gold medal win. This is very different from Richardson's experience, as her drug test was made very public and she had to quickly defend herself. Richardson states, "My name and my talent was slaughtered to the people." To conclude this episode, I want to emphasize that women have come a long way when it comes to involvement in sports. There has been a lot of positive impacts on women, but there is still a long road to travel down. We need to break traditional gender expectations and allow women to compete in sports in the way they see fit. The public also needs to recognize the double standard and extra discrimination that we place on women of color. Sports should be a place where people are celebrated for their talents. They facilitate community and should be something fun to be a part of. Women's sports have taken heat for too long, from the beginning of the bicycle to female Olympic champions. Let women have fun and kick some ass, for goodness sake. So thank you for listening to the 4th episode of Sex, Suffrage, and Scandalous Ladies.